All right, Braves fans, let's get rolling. I'm George McNair, and this is State of the Braves. Well, guys, it is an exciting time as pitchers and catchers are reporting down to Northport, and spring training is officially underway. Man, that is just a good feeling as a Braves fan, as a baseball fan, right? It is, as they say, everything is new and fresh, and the hopes of the new season. And Braves fans have a lot to hope for. A lot of those other teams, it might be empty hopes, but for the Braves, it is not empty hope at all. We know that this is probably, well, let's not say probably, this is the most talented team in baseball, and they have high expectations. We're going to be talking about that. The main topic of today's episode is the changing nature of the Braves leadership and clubhouse mentality. They're coming off, of course, a very disappointing exit to the postseason last year, but an amazing regular season in 2023. And everybody's coming back. And Alex Anthopoulos has made some key additions as well that make me very excited and hopeful for that this team could be even better than the 2023 team. So let's go into some Braves news real quick, and then we will get into the main topic of the episode. So yeah, pitchers and catchers have reported, and already most of the position players, the primary starting position players for the Braves, have also showed up early. Man, I just love that about the Braves. They're invested, they care, they love baseball, and they love hanging out together. They love being together. You listen to any interviews that these guys do. The clubhouse is just a really healthy thing, a healthy culture, and they just love being around each other. And I think that really does matter. I guarantee you that is not the case with every team in baseball. Um, Also, as they have reported, of course, you get some interviews and some sound bites, and Spencer Strider, who made some news at Braves Fest the other day, basically saying that this team has World Series expectations. Anything other than World Series appearance is considered a disappointment, and he backed up those statements just the other day as he arrived at spring training. Yes, this team's standard is to win a World Series. When you know that you are the most talented team in baseball, it makes sense that he would have those standards. And to me, it's just good to hear him say it. So this is going to be a part of what I talk about in this episode is Strider and also Ronald Acuna. And Acuna made some news just yesterday, and it is some very positive news. He made the statements that he wants to be a Brave for life. And how awesome would that be? Let's be honest, guys. Ronald Acuna, the most talented position player in all of baseball. Here are his actual quotes. He said, "It's not a secret. I want to be a Brave for life. I hope I can stay here forever, and hopefully we can make that happen soon." So, man, I mean, those statements, it's one thing to say, I love being a Brave, or I would love to happen, but the fact that he's talking, maybe we can make that happen soon, it means he's motivated to stay a Brave, that he loves being an Atlanta Brave. And the fact is, uh, Ronald Acuna being locked up for maybe his entire career as a Brave would just be awesome. He's on a trajectory as not only being a Hall of Famer. I know it's still early in his career, but not only is he on that trajectory, but maybe an all-time great Hall of Famer. When you saw what he did last year in his MVP season, and he's motivated, guys. He's motivated to come back in a big way. He hates how the Braves exited the playoffs, and he's taking ownership of his own poor performance in that playoffs, at least according to his standards. So, yeah, I mean, I think when he's saying this out loud, he wants to be a Brave for life. We should take him seriously, and I think it's really, this is obvious, but it's encouraging news as a Braves fan that Ronald might be a Brave for his entire career. I think Ronald, honestly, might be a different kind of star. And what I mean by that is his love for the game is very obvious, right? He's not just out there playing and going through the motions for the money. His love for the game is obvious. His love for his teammates may be more important to him than some of the other stars in baseball. You know, you see guys. Let's be honest, right? They go for the money, they go for the fame, they go for maybe the bright lights of a New York or an LA. And I don't know if Ronald cares as much about that as some other things. And I think these statements highlight that he loves where he's at. He loves the people that surround him. And, I'm going to put more into the next episode, talking about a possible Ronald Acuna extension and what that would look like. but it's a no-brainer for the Braves to try to lock up Ronald Acuna for the remainder of his career. Also making some news as the guys have come back to spring training. Max Fried made some statements just respecting the Braves process in terms of a possible extension or maybe not, right? That they don't talk about it out in the open, out in the press. And I know Alex Anthopoulos also made some statements of how much he respects Max Fried doing that. It doesn't really mean much in terms of will Fried sign an extension or not. Most are going to say that it's highly unlikely. I would tend to agree that it's highly unlikely we would see any kind of extension during the year. But one thing I will say is that doesn't mean Fried is gone for certain, right? If the Braves allow Fried to get to free agency, yeah, it's probably harder to re-sign him. We've seen that happen with Freddie Freeman. Dansby Swanson is kind of a different deal because he was just priced out of what the Braves wanted to do. But I think it is legitimate that Fried could get to free agency, and the Braves, based off of what happens in 2024, based off of the rest of the free agent market and the trade market, they could still determine that Max Fried is the best bet and they'd bring him back. I mean, they certainly love him. If he leaves, it's not because the Braves don't value him. Obviously, we know that they have price points that they are dedicated to, and they're not really going to stray from that. But I don't think Fried is gone for certain in that scenario. But in terms of him getting an extension, I wouldn't look for that. What we could certainly say is Fried is going to be highly motivated this season to stay healthy, to have a great year. He's in his walk year. Not that he hasn't been motivated to be great in these last years, but he's been absent from some big moments. He's been injured in some big moments, and in the playoffs hasn't been 100%. So I know that Max Fried is really wanting to put his mark on 2024. Signs also point to Ronaldo Lopez being stretched out as a starter in spring training. When the Braves signed Lopez, of course, he's been a pretty dominant reliever the last couple years. He's been a starter in the past, and when they signed him, they said, yeah, we would like to stretch him out into a starter. Some people didn't believe that. I was on the fence about that, what they want to do. So it does look like they're going to stretch him out. Um, so will Ronaldo Lopez be the fifth starter for the Braves? I actually don't think it's that simple as to who wins the fifth starter job. Him or Bryce Elder or Huascar Ynoa or someone else, fill in the blank. I think the Braves could choose to break camp with actually six starters to begin the year, possibly with the idea of protecting a 40-year-old Charlie Morton and a Chris Sale, who has been often injured, seems to be healthy now. But why not start with six and you kind of mitigate some wear and tear early in the season? Or maybe they're just prepping for injury. Anytime you ramp up pitchers, it always seems that a couple guys have an elbow issue or a shoulder issue, and you just don't know what's going to happen. And so having another starter in the mix early in Lopez just makes a lot of sense. You can always gear him back down and put him in the bullpen if Huascar Ynoa steps up, or Bryce Elder just is clearly the guy and you just want to go with five. You can always put Lopez back in the bullpen, and he's shown to be very effective there. But we'll obviously keep watching that. I think it's one of the few battles or question marks that the Braves have in spring training. All right, the last bit of news is not really specific to Braves news, but it's league news, and it's the new MLB, Nike, and Fanatics jerseys that the players are wearing in spring training. And if you have not seen these guys, and it's an easy Google search, but man, these jerseys look bad, and I'm pretty annoyed by it. I like I like the classic look of baseball jerseys, and honestly, don't mess with it. Players and fans alike are getting their first look at these jerseys, and they just look bad. They fit the players poorly. They're not customizable. I know a lot of the players have complained about the pants, where in the past you could customize the length and the width and everything about the fit of the pants. Of course, everybody has different fits that they like, and so they're not able to do that. And also the look of the lettering, like it's smaller lettering. It makes the jerseys look cheap, like cheap knockoffs that you could buy, at an off brand Amazon or something. I mean, they just look bad. The Braves front logo looks too small across the chest. I just don't know what Major League Baseball, Nike, and Fanatics were thinking. They simply look cheap. Now, the material of the jerseys are supposed to be more breathable and all that. Um, but gosh, don't mess with a good thing. One of the things I have with Rob Manfred, he's made a lot of changes across baseball with rule changes. Some of those have worked really well. I was questionable about the pitch clock. It seems to have been a good change, but some of these changes just seem like changes for change's sake, or maybe in this case for money's sake, right? When you're talking about Nike and Fanatics, but don't mess with a good thing. I'm sure that in fact, I know that Major League Baseball has gotten a lot of pushback already from a lot of different areas regarding these jerseys. Now, does that mean they'll go back to the old jerseys? I have my doubts, right? I guarantee you millions upon millions of dollars have been spent on these new jerseys, and they probably are committed to them for this season, but it looks bad. And uh, this is one of those things that I don't know why you'd mess with it. Um, and hopefully they change it. All right, now let's move on to the main topic of today's episode, the changing nature of the Braves leadership and clubhouse mentality. Um, Look, some of this started early in the offseason with Alex Anthopoulos and some of the guys he's added on the field to the Braves. And so let's talk about that first, right? Because on the field additions really matter a lot. He added a playoff caliber starter in Chris Sale. He added a higher ceiling left fielder who will play every day in Jared Kelnick. And then he added multiple pieces to his bullpen, making it more dynamic and deeper. So these multiple additions, multiple signings that most of these guys are hard throwing, strikeout guys that can punch you out. And basically, what the Phillies did to the Braves in the postseason last year, they want to be able to do to the Phillies and the Dodgers and other teams in the postseason this year, and mitigate any possible injuries as well, because this bullpen is probably the deepest in baseball. So you have these new additions, right? And these new additions and health for the postseason will both play a huge role in the success of this team. But I think an underappreciated piece for the 2024 Braves success may be the changing nature of their clubhouse leadership. So I want to go into that just a little bit because I do think it's being underplayed a little bit. So, you have Charlie Morton and Max Fried likely soon to depart. As Morton and Fried likely begin their last seasons with the Braves, the rest of the Braves core is maturing and needs to take larger roles of leadership on the team. Now, like I said, Fried is not certain to leave, but even if he remains, I view Max Fried as more of a steadying presence, perhaps more than a driving force in the clubhouse. And that's not like putting Fried down at all, right? Steady guys who just work hard and you can count on are incredibly reliable. You need those guys. You can't have 26 guys who are in your face and fiery and edgy. And so I think Fried has the fire, but I think it burns really deep, and he's more of a low-key guy. The departure of Ron Washington and Eric Young Sr., I think, are really important too. Not in a positive way. Obviously, Ron Washington especially had so much leadership and so much of a presence in the Braves clubhouse. But, he made a comment as he was departing for the Angels this offseason. And I think his words ring really true to me. He said that it was a time for the players to take the reins, basically, right? That he had taught them well. He'd kind of help establish. He wasn't taking all the credit for himself, but he just helped establish a culture, and the players were going to have to take ownership of that and take the reins. And I really think that is true. They leave a call on these star players for the Braves to come into their own as leaders, and I'm already starting to see signs of that are really exciting. And so the Braves do have maturing stars. Maybe we've lost sight of the fact of just how young this Braves team is because they've been so successful. But most of these players are in their 20s. Some of them are in their early 20s. But they have an awesome foundation and already have experienced a lot of both winning and playoff disappointment, right? A lot of this team experienced the thrill the victory of winning the 2021 World Series, but these last two playoff exits have been incredibly disappointing. And I think the disappointment of last season's exit cannot be understated, right? It kind of shapes you as a player. And I have especially seen that already with Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna, especially. Neither of those two took part really in the 2021 playoff run. I'm sure that it especially bothered Acuna since, he had to deal with injury during that season. But they want to leave their own mark, right? They want to lead a team and participate in a big way in winning a World Series. So I think those two, especially, you can really feel a driving focus to what they're bringing already this spring training. So a different mentality, this has been talked about a lot, really from the beginning of the Braves' early exit last postseason. As they say, more is learned from failure than success. I think these recent comments from the Braves make it very clear that as a team, to a man, they realize a different mentality is needed in the clubhouse. Now, mentality doesn't mean we change everything. It doesn't mean that the system that the Braves have created is some kind of failure. It means a tweak. It means that you bring a little bit more of an edge and a fire to maybe not even the day to day, but to the long term view of what you're trying to do as a team. And then certainly once you get in the playoffs, you got to have that killer instinct. The Braves definitely need to play with an edge. They need some grit. They need that killer instinct. I made the point earlier this offseason that while this was needed, it did not require the Braves to become jerks. It didn't require the Braves to trade away half the team or anything like that. Obviously, they brought in a couple key guys I've already mentioned, and they just need to figure out how to play with a little more fire. We don't want the Braves to turn into the Phillies. Okay, that's not the point. I certainly don't want that. I want them to still be who they are. It's a group of really good guys who are dedicated to each other. I love that about them, right? Just bring a little more fire and a little more edge to what you're doing. Um, but right, it still meant a few key additions of players with this edge. Chris Sale, I think especially, is that guy. I think he will be a really key part of this team, especially if he can stay healthy. But the Braves, the players coming back, right? They needed to bring a different mentality. And like I said, I think we are seeing evidence of that already. Strider, his comments at Braves Fest and now early in this spring training. He expects to win. It's World Series or bust. It's embracing those high expectations. And I think that's really, really healthy. These are the actions of a true leader. And I think Strider is emerging. Even though he's a younger guy still on this team, I really think Strider is emerging as a leader of this team, which is important, especially if Reed does leave. But whether he leaves or not, I think Strider is becoming that driving force from the pitching side of things for the Braves clubhouse. AJ Minter also made some recent comments on the Foul Territory podcast. He loves the additions to the bullpen. He thinks they're better. He also admitted that Chris Sale brings an edge to the team and that they really need to embrace this kind of, well, he called it an FU mentality, which I don't know if I'd use those terms, but I appreciate the sentiment of like, we're going to hammer you and we are we are not going to take anything. And he didn't directly refer to it, but I think the Bryce Harper Orlando Arcia thing was probably in his mind when he said that. So I really interpret that mentality as a combination of extreme confidence and no fear of failure. You can't fear failure when you're out there playing at a high level. You just have to go and play and leave it all out there. And then the comments from Ronald Acuna also just give me a ton of good feelings here, right? So early on, he arrives at spring training. He apologized to the media for not speaking to them after the Game 4 playoff loss. You might remember that. He kind of just left, stormed out. Obviously, super disappointed. He was mad and disappointed with how the Braves played. But I love that Ronald is willing to take some ownership of this. I think it shows a real growth and level of maturity for him in how to deal with that loss. But, it also shows that Ronald cares a lot. He's not just a player, showing up for a paycheck or whatever. He wants to win more than anything. I've kind of thought about this. I think Ronald, he plays with such joy, with such energy. He reminds me of one of the kids from the Sandlot movie, and I mean that in the most positive, glowing way possible. He loves the game. I think if you're playing baseball for a living, you should play with a joy and with like a kid's mentality and joy, right? And you need that guy on the team. And I think Ozzy is kind of that guy too. Um, but I also imagine that this loss will cause him to bring a greater edge to when he shows up in the playoffs again. I really do. I expect him for the playoffs 2024 to just go off. Um, when your star is as invested as Ronald is, it is really exciting. And obviously he's invested because again, his comments of wanting to be a brave for life, he cares, he wants to win as a Brave, he wants to be a Brave. So let's go. Um, I already mentioned the additions of Chris Sale and Jared Kelnick. I really do think that these two will add some more fire. And also, I think these two are really motivated individually for success as well. So I love both of these additions. The more I've been able to think through them, I think they were complicated and I wouldn't say confusing, but they weren't straightforward when Alex Anthopoulos made both of these additions. But think about how motivated both of these guys would be, right? Chris Sale is coming off multiple years of injury, lost seasons basically. A guy who was on a Hall of Fame trajectory, and he's really had his career derailed. And he's made comments where he has admitted that he felt like he let down Boston just because he couldn't get back on the mound. But Chris Sale is clearly beloved by many of his former teammates. Many teammates will say that he is their favorite teammate of all time. He lays it on the line. He holds his teammates accountable, holds them to a high standards. He's notorious for, he's kind of known in the larger media world as being a little bit of a hothead because he's broken TVs and thrown things in the clubhouse. He cut up jerseys that he thought were ugly and he didn't want to wear. But pretty much from what I can read, every one of his actions was more team focused than self focused. And I think that's why his teammates love him so much. If he was a selfish dude, you would not get comments like he's one of my favorite teammates of all time. He has that competitive edge without a selfish streak. And, he's a guy that has a next level competitive nature, and you need that on your team. But again, he needs to be on the field and contribute to really lead and help lead this team. And I'm sure he knows that. Um, so, there's a legitimate reason for why this guy would be fueled to have a good season. Jared Kelnick has that similar edge too, but he's a young guy. I don't necessarily expect him to lead. He's a young guy coming in to his first season with the Braves. But, he's also going to bring a fire. He's a fiery guy. He's known for that. And he's also had to go through some major growing pains early in his career. He was supposed to be a can't miss prospect, and he experienced multiple years of struggle in Seattle. He had some flashes of really good, and that's why the Braves got him. But being a can't miss prospect who's failing, that's a really hard thing to go through. And so I think he is going to bring a youthful energy to this team, a desire to be a part of a winning culture. He won't be a leader, like I said, but he's going to bring a newfound energy. And I think he can kind of reclaim that love for the game again in a less pressurized situation with the Braves. Just be a part of the group. It's such a good group to be a part of, and I think he's going to love being in Atlanta. But yeah, I want the Braves, and especially I think of Acuna and Strider to find that, Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, Tom Brady, Tiger Woods mentality. And those are guys that I kind of thought of that, man, these guys are killers. I mean, mentally, they have everything under control. And you might love or hate those guys. I don't know. But I think we can all respect the kind of competitors they were, right? Each one of them had a killer instinct, a no back down, no matter what kind of attitude that the greats all have. And it's as much of a mental edge. I mean, all these guys were gifted, but I think it's more of a mental edge than a physical edge. And they, at the same time, right, they set that standard. They hold everyone else to a really high standard, um, and they're great teammates for it. Baseball is different than these other sports, right? You can't burn white hot the entire season. So I think the Braves do need to be able to balance that. But being able to lock in during the playoffs is an absolute must. I'll bring this up one more time. I really think that the Bryce Harper incident with Arcia is probably the best thing long term that could have happened to the Braves. It wasn't great in the moment, right? The Braves did not react well to it in the moment. They should have bowed up and stood their ground against Harper. I kind of wish someone had tackled him as he was rounding the bases and staring down Arcia. What would have happened for the rest of the postseason? It could have helped the Braves win that series and win the whole thing. But do you think the next time the Braves face the Phillies in the playoffs that they're going to have a deeper motivation and will have a greater focus to smoke those guys? I really do. And I think that's what it's going to create. I think if the Braves have to face the Phillies again, it's going to be a totally different ball game. Deeper focus in the pressure moments uh, that lets them perform at a higher level, right? While everybody's knees are knocking, you have that deeper focus. That's what the Braves need to find as a team. So, while I think the entire team is coming into 2024 with a greater edge and focus, Strider and Acuna's maturation into team leaders is very apparent to me, and it's going to be really fun to watch this season and the impact of that leadership and of that growth. It may be the difference to take this team to even greater heights. So, guys, look, we know 2024 has great promise. The Braves are easy favorites in the NL East, and quite honestly, them and the Dodgers, right? They're the class of baseball. They are probably going to have to stand toe to toe with the Phillies and the Dodgers at some point this season. But I really like where they are as a team. I think they're the best team in baseball. And this year, I think even more than 2023, they're set up for success. Nothing's guaranteed, especially in baseball, but I think Anthopoulos has done a tremendous job building this team, and I'm really excited. So, guys, warmer weather is coming. Spring training is coming. I love this time of year, and I hope you do too. I know you do too. So, we'll keep rooting on the Braves. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you soon.